Hello, my wonderful villain Tremites, and happy Halloween to those who celebrate. If you love horror videos and massive battles like this one, make sure to smash the like button. This is gonna, I think, be my first time having a multiverse war as I attempt to answer the question on who is the strongest verse out of the popular horror verses out there in fiction. When I originally posed this question, several verses were recommended, but the most popular were the King verse, SCP verse, Hellraiser verse, and finally Cthulhu Mythos or Lovecraft verse. What makes this interesting is that I was conflicted about SCP because it's just fan fiction. Like, that's literally what it is. But then again, it won the popular vote, so I had to give it a fair shake, and it is far stronger than what I thought. So this battle is going to be amazing. So again, please show some support. It took several, countless hours to research all of this and bring this banger to you. So I hope you guys enjoy this. I am going to go through each verse and then give you guys my opinion on how they rank from weakest to strongest. By the way, it's important to note this is my opinion, and what I'm hoping to do in this video is give you enough information that you can just give me your opinion yourself. So without further ado, let's begin. First verse that I want to talk to you guys about is one that I've made a video on before, kind of going over certain aspects of the lore, but not in its entirety, and that is Cthulhu Mythos. Cthulhu Mythos obviously had to make the list because of its impact on the genre of horror, especially after the 19th century. H.P. Lovecraft, although obviously a very controversial figure, he did write several literature pieces that led to inspiring cosmic horror in its entirety, and I'm going to go over what makes, in short, the Cthulhu Mythos so powerful and why people hold it in such high regard. So, first of all, only a few humans can actually grasp the infinity from which the great old ones actually come from. It is extra-dimensional or higher dimensional in nature. Although they do have shape, it is clear that the great old ones are extra-dimensional beings that dimensionally project down, and later in the works, it is extrapolated upon exactly what this means. This would be referred to as the outside, where the horrifying beings of the Lovecraft lore truly comes from. And what makes Lovecraft such an iconic standout for horror was the cosmic side. He played on the unknown terrors of the vastness of the concept of time and space. It was like untapped at the time, and he really did kind of lay the landscape for cosmic horror in its entirety. Light does harm beings, as the outside is a realm devoid of all light. Light harms these beings as the outside is a realm devoid of all light, so it's foreign to them. They are from an abyss of horror beyond anything man can conceive of or even philosophize about. The verse itself consists of a high hyperversal, unending cosmic structure that goes on endlessly into infinity. Azathoth exists beyond all of this and is the center of unending chaos. He is a mindless being that controls all of time and space from the center of chaos itself. Some of the typical horrors also come from the vast areas of time and space that aren't explored or known, and possibly represent all things evil. Humans typically in Cthulhu only comprehend the 3D. That's what makes it so terrifying for them through the storytelling. However, a few of them actually have the capability to go far beyond that. The cosmology has a gate at each end of dimensions, with first being the first gate, which goes on for infinity after this, confirming the hyperversal structure of the verse. So all the universes, the endless universes within the third third dimensional realm of Lovecraft lore. At the end of all that, or to escape that, you go through the first gate. Beings outside of each dimension dictate their other self in beings below them. This goes on infinitely in the cosmic cone. So basically, the highest being sends a cosmic facet throughout the entire cone and basically forces everything to change its structure. And it goes on infinitely, impacting every form of that character throughout the cosmos. These infinite beings are just infinite manifestations of a one true version of them that exists outside of all of space and time. These archetypes are called waves, and they exist somewhere called the ultimate abyss. All of this is simply derived from the supreme archetype. Everything is a result of the archetype itself. More evidence to suggest there is a transcendent being exists, and this of course would be the massive being known as Azathoth. Some poetry in verse does have the gods in an almost ascending fashion, which will give layering into outer versal for the verse. Azathoth is in more works aligned as the supreme mindless being at the center of chaos itself, like the final god. In a way, Azathoth can be counted in this battle as he wills everything. It's possible he could amp beings to near his level, although if he does wake up, it is stated in the lore that he and basically his verse ends. So yeah, that wraps up Cthulhu real quick. If you are a Cthulhu fan, drop a like in the comment section for that breakdown. But moving on, we have to cover the rest of the verses, as that is only one of 4. Next up for this one will be Hellraiser. For the Hellraiser scaling, I'm going to be using the guidebook actually written by Clive Barker himself, the creator of the verse, in order to break down the cosmology and explain how everything works. And I'll also speak on some stuff shown throughout the canon comic run. Fun fact, Clive Barker was actually labeled the new King of Horror by Stephen King himself back in the day when he first came on the scene. So, starting off, let's get on with the wild scaling of Hellraiser. Even the author, Clive Barker himself, warns all of getting involved when venturing into the verse because he states it has real-world implications. Hell itself, according to Barker, transcends the fiction as they discuss the Hellraiser movie and how it actually is real. And he states, just like every religion basically, you have the right to believe him, but Clive speculates that all this was actually real. They can deliver even the darkest of dreams in hell, preying upon particularly the most disturbing of pain and pleasure. Hell can deliver promises that were promised in the Bible itself by the transcendental Christian God. Clive Barker himself, the author, serves the Leviathan, the god of the Cenobites. Clive refers to himself as fodder compared to Leviathan, who commands his Cenobites to troll existence. These Cenobites, of course, are made famous in the movies, especially their prince, the high priest himself, Pinhead. Some Cenobites, according to the guide, are actually capable of consuming real-world religion itself and feed off all the manipulation they commit with these religions in the real world. Lady Pinhead casually dismantled the Cenobite that actually consumes these religions. Cenobites plot to undo order and chaos, which destroys everything. Barker also refers to Leviathan as a stand-in for our real-world God. All things written and forged by man is at the whim of Leviathan, who does it as a big F you to God, basically. So Leviathan isn't actually God. God tried to expand into Leviathan's turf, and as a result, he decided to troll by messing with his creation. Barker says he went mad chasing the truth of the Leviathan, and he actually no longer has a clue whether or not it is real or fake, and if this is fiction or true. Clive Barker also says hell is transcendent to us in the way the concept of nirvana would be. Hell inspired the myths and gods and all those things. These transcendent beings to us are infinitesimal to the Leviathan. Our existence is also a mirror of hell, which Cenobites passively warp endlessly. Many cultures we know of mirrored Leviathan's hell, like Greece itself. A real-life Marine went MIA after messing with a box in Vietnam, according to the guidebook. The Leviathan grants us our own way to transcend and become one with hell. Clive, once again in the writings, apologizes for subjecting us to the horrific nature of the power of the Hellraiser verse. Leviathan can grant what even dreamers and storytellers have not told yet. It's impossible to them. Hell uses religions and philosophies to feed itself and manipulate, as I kind of mentioned prior. Clive and LeMerchant tried to rid the evidence in the guide, but they ended up posting it anyway. And of course, they apologized for it, but they subjected us to it anyway. So, F in the chat for Clive for subjecting us to this anyway. Clive's final tale is one of a man worse impacted than even he was. Crazy John John. It also confirmed that, compared to the real-world narrative value, there are realms beyond our space and time where these beings toy with us. Like all religions, Clive says it's up to you to believe the stories or not, but he put it there for you to analyze and decide whether you believe it or not. But overall, Hellraiser is one of the most broken and wonky verses in horror and deserves its place in this matchup. Moving on, we got two more to cover, and next up is the fanfic galore that went viral, SCP, and we got to talk about how strong it is. Particularly, we're going to talk about the horror side, which of course is the infamous Scarlet King and his story. So let's begin. To fully grasp how badass the Scarlet King, his children, and his armies truly are, and how dangerous they are in the clash of all these realms, I need to go over the scaling building up to him. So there is a massive tree, of course, which encompasses existence. And at the 7th level is the realm of old gods and forgotten tales. And it's at this point in which I believe the scaling gets solidly into outerversal, as of course the immutable gods are far beyond dimensions and such. So like at this point, I don't think you can argue it's not outerversal. Death, or the realm of death, seems to make a massive gap in between the lower realms, like old gods on the tree, relative to higher aspects of the tree. So what I mean by that is, like, there was implications of transcendence with the way there's a hierarchy in the tree, right? But death, the elder death, seemed to separate it, and the transcendences were even bigger of a gap after that. So it gets way stronger after that. So we're already in outerversal with more transcendences and major gaps. Like, it's crazy. And then we have the elder gods. Not the old gods, the elder gods, who transcend the tree itself, which is absurd, right? And then the elder god realms are beyond nothing and something, and are uncountable in horror. Still, they pale in comparison to the one true big bad horror king of that area, which is, of course, the Scarlet King. After getting past the realms of the elder gods, there's darkness, and then layers in other places before actually arriving at the place of the Scarlet King. The king himself has his own children and armies to which he commands. Together, they casually scar things like elder gods and creation itself. And of course, the Scarlet King asked for everyone to be told of what they've seen when they venture to see him in the stories. We're told, thus creating one of the most famous fan-made horror characters of all time. And he will be a major player on the horror side of SCP as it clashes with the other verses. So now, let's get to the last verse to be scaled in this rumble. And this is probably the most talked about, well, it should be the most talked about horror verse on my channel. So I'm not going to spend too much time on it. I have other videos on it. You can go check them out. But anyways, we got to talk about the Stephen King verse. Stephen King, of course, probably the most famous horror writer ever in terms of modern times. His verse is made famous through the movies and stuff. Like, people, it's well known. It just dropped. It's real popular, but it's super strong because of his lore written in the novels, in the comics, right? So first of all, we got to talk about how the verse is set up. The structure is made up of constantly transcending and infinitely and endlessly growing universes upon multiverses and so on and so forth, right? And it keeps on going and keeps on going and keeps on going endlessly. And then eventually all this is encapsulated in the idea of size itself. What is size? Of course, size, the idea of being bigger, transcending all that. This is all contained within the Dark Towers. The Dark Towers also contains all stories written, ever written, thought about written, never written, all that. Everything like that, right? It's just another room in the Dark Tower. It's irrelevant. It's part of the Dark Tower. The Dark Tower, right, technically should include us. We should be somewhere in there. As Stephen King said, he just writes about it. We should all be a part of it. We die if it dies, all that. He doesn't even want to write about it, by the way. He's forced to by higher beings, which I'll talk about in a bit. So, you have the Dark Towers, right? And the Dark Towers rest upon the back of Maturin the turtle. He caught it on its shell before it fell into the void. And then it's, of course, like this existence, that this level of high outer existence that a Maturin exists in. You then eventually go beyond and outside of that, far beyond anything, the beyond lands, or land beyond all lands. They don't have an actual name for it. There's no logical sense of it, but that's where true form Pennywise, the absolute consumer, the Deadlights, exists in his true manifested form. Of course, other big bad dimension is someone that Pennywise can't even comprehend, and that is Crimson King, who one day hopes to destroy everything and usurp even Gon himself, who transcends the real world, Stephen King, the Dark Towers, all that, and forces Stephen King to write, as he is the influence of everything. And to look at Stephen King's verse, to understand it specifically, was stated to not actually understand the power of Gon, because we never possibly could. So, we got all these verses out of the way, right? I want to do it two ways. First of all, smash the like button if you got this far. Thank you so much for supporting the video. This has been a blast researching, and it took forever, but it's been fun. So, first round I want to talk about where I personally had the rankings before I began the mega research for the video, right? So just my biased thinking, because it's just what I knew at the time. First, I had Kingverse. Second, I thought Cthulhu would be second at the time. Third, I thought would be SCP, because you never know with fanfic, but no, that's not true. Third, I had Hellraiser because of the Dream Sea, which all stories are contained in the Dream Sea, and Pinhead pissed in it. And then fourth, I had SCP because I didn't think SCP was that strong. Then, I got into Scarlet King and all that, and I was like, oh shit, I downplayed it. So now we got to talk about my real ranking post-research, right? Coming in last, but of course, by the way, just a reminder to all the fans out there, it's just my opinion. Formulate your own based on this video and my other works that are in the horror playlist, but I do want to know, doesn't mean any of them are weak. They're obviously high outer versal. So this is just absurd horror scaling. So getting into it, coming in last place, unfortunately, Cthulhu Mythos. I thought it would be a lot stronger. It wasn't as strong as I thought, but still the outer gods are easily outer versal, and they could be hypothetically powered fully by Azathoth. I don't mind that, but still, even with that, it's just not strong enough to compete with the other verses. Moving on, coming in third place, I have SCP. While it did surprise me with the Scarlet King story and how high it scaled into outer, I was pleasantly shocked by that. It doesn't have enough to beat the other two I'm about to talk about. Easily, I think it would maul Cthulhu. I think there's a big gap between Cthulhu and SCP. Sorry if you disagree, but anyways, I don't think it's quite as strong as the other one, which in their horror side of SCP with Scarlet King and stuff, it didn't have as much quote real world narrative consequences as the other two I'm going to talk about. And also, by the way, before people bring up pataphysics, because I've seen comments on that, Deadpool has pataphysics by the definition of it. Ben Grimm the Thing from Marvel has it. Like these weak, like random characters, all of them have it. So if that's high scaling, it applies to every other verse. So that's a slippery ass slope and a dumb hill to die on, in my opinion. Still, SCP is stupid strong, and it comes in third place. Number 2, I have the Hellraiser verse. What swayed Hellraiser verse for me and moved it above SCP was the works done by Clive Barker to accompany the verse and explain the cosmology. Him saying he's fodder to the Leviathan and even higher tier Cenobites. The fact that the real world is orchestrated and commanded by like the workings of Cenobites, just random Cenobites. Like that shit's ridiculous. The fact that he said it drove him crazy itself. All these stories are supposed to be real. It's basically written to be like a religion and that you have the right to believe it. It'd be crazy if a cult formed off it, but I don't think it ever will. But yeah, and it makes sense because he was inspired a lot by our number 1 and our number 4, Cthulhu, of course, which inspired modern horror. But number 1, we have the King verse. King verse remains undefeated in the horror battle, although I do think Hellraiser came awfully closer than I expected, and I will be doing a Pinhead and Pennywise video on my homie Q's channel. Make sure to check that out when it drops. But anyways, getting back to this, right? What makes this verse crazy is all these ideas of size and stuff and transcendences in the other verse. That's in the Dark Tower. That gets shit on by Penny. That gets shit on by Crimson King. GG. I mean, it is absurd, and I just think the levels of scaling with the real world narrative implications, all that, just gets too absurd with the King verse as I reviewed, and I believe it takes the victory overall here. With major players being like Mordred, who can destroy the Dark Towers, Pennywise, who's beyond all that, and Crimson King, and things of that nature. So, real quick, I want to talk about why is horror so strong? Because obviously all these verses are high outer. I think it's strong because horror, the most scary stuff, as Lovecraft demonstrated for later works, the unknown, illogical, and things of that nature are the most horrifying to people because we want to understand, we want to comprehend. What we can't understand scares us. And I believe that is why the scaling, whether intentionally or unintentionally by the writers, gets so stupidly broken in the horror genre. But anyways, guys, let me know what you think of this video. What do you think is the strongest horror verse out there? Keep it nice in the comment section. Thank you for supporting. And if you want to talk about horror, comics, and all that, check out my new public Discord server. Link will be in the comments down below. But anyways, thank you guys for watching. It's been your boy, YFV, and I'll see y'all later. Peace.